When you got the script, what about
Right.
Brad did you most identify with?
Oh gosh, one of the first things that I said to Todd was, well, let me think about that. One of the first things I said to Todd was, "I'm not this guy, but I know this guy." I knew what I wanted to do at a very early age, and I feel very fortunate that I had that sort of drive. Brad had the complete opposite reaction, I guess, or experience. So in a weird way, I actually personally couldn't relate to his maybe lack of identity, but certainly I grew up in suburbia. I know a lot of people who just went to college because that's what people did, and they declared a major because that's what you do, and you got married because that's the next step. I mean, he's being pushed and pulled throughout his life. So while I personally didn't have that sort of experience, the experience of Brad, I think, is actually probably more common. So, I know people like that.
So what do you think it is about Brad that gets him to a place where he's ready to cheat with Sarah?
Well, he's never done anything. There's a scene in the movie where Jennifer Connelly, who plays Kathy, where she says tells the story about this soldier in Iraq, this man that had come back, and talks about that he always wanted to do something different. He wanted to make a choice because he was being bold, and I'm bastardizing the exact lines, but basically he stepped up and did something. He made a choice. And I don't think Brad's done that in a very long time. And I think he gets to a point where he needed to do something to break him out of this rut. And not that what he does is the right thing or a good thing, but it's something that he needed to go through. And I think Sarah just was the right person at the right time, or the wrong person at the wrong time, depending on your view. But that certainly was the catalyst. Was a conversation with Kathy.
What was the hardest thing in the film to do? What was the hardest scene?
Well, most people think that the hardest scene to film, rather, was probably the nudity and the sex scenes. Truthfully, I think the most difficult scene was were the emotional ones. There's a scene that Kate and I have at the end of the movie where we're in the end zone and I'm sort of spilling out my guts, and it's in a very almost melodramatic style, and that was to get that tone right. I think was very difficult because it was a very important scene, but it needed to be sort of larger than life, but still staying in this sense of reality that these characters had created. So that scene actually probably got the most attention, which sort of surprises people because people think, oh, the love scenes must have been the most difficult. And you're like, well, you sort of know what you get when you shoot a scene like that. It's the more emotionally bearing scenes that are more difficult to act.
If you could be a fly on the wall in the theater as the audience is leaving, what questions do you hope they'll be asking?
The only thing that I would love for people to do at the end of this movie is to be curious to what happens to these people. When people walk out of the movie going, I want to know what happens to this guy, or what do you think they're doing now? Or I always love that conversation because of course you're like, what do you mean? The film ended, the story's over. Bam, it's fiction, it's not real. But if you can get people that interested in the story and into these characters that they care and they want to know, then we've done our job. So that's to me that's the greatest compliment, is to have people talking, really, just to be interested.
Awesome. Well, that's all the time I have.
Is that it?
That's
All
it.
right.